In this video we will talk about camera settings, and we will focus mainly on the camera settings that are for the phone. However, I'm going to cover a lot of details that are related to DSLR cameras. So if you are recording with a DSLR camera, this video will be like introduction, like an intro to see how all the settings work together in DSLR. For the phone users that are going to record with the phone, it is also helpful to understand how the settings are done in camera, because what phone app does is mimics the settings of the camera. They have totally different technologies that are capturing images. However, the terminology is very often the same, so you need to understand. In your phone, most probably you will have a lot of automated settings, but I want you to understand how they are done in case you want to adjust something, and you will have a freedom to do so after watching this video. This video is still useful for camera users. So let's dive into terminology for you to understand what we're talking about when we are doing some camera settings. Hey guys, it's a little bit too hot now. We have summer, so let me take it off. Alright, now it's much better to record, not that hot. Let's start with the frame rate. You know already about frame rate from previous videos. What did we learn about frame rate is that usually you are recording in the frame rate of 24 or 25 frames per second, or if your settings are not changing automatically in your phone, then it's 30 frames per second. But let me remind you what is this in case you have forgotten. Frame rate is frames per second that are appearing in your video. So within 1 second of your video there are 25 pictures, and this is called frame rate, frames per second, FPS, frame per second. Now the lower frame rate, it creates the more natural look, because when you move the hand like this you can see the motion blur. So between the position of hand here and here there is a motion blur, so it looks quite natural. That's why we see the movies in this frame rate. It has this effect of motion blur. Now the higher frame rate allows you to make so many pictures within 1 second, like for example 60 frames in 1 second. Imagine how many pictures have you done. So if someone was going with the bike through here, through my scene here, they most probably would be captured in details 60 times in a second, so we have all the details. There is no motion blur. That's shortly. But I'm just reminding you, if you forgot about frame rates, go up into this course and see the details. In this video I'm going to tell you every time what is the recommended setup at the end of each section. So we're talking about frame rates, and the recommended setup of the frames is 24 or 25 FPS, or if you cannot change it, it's going to be 30 FPS minimum, and that's what you need to find in your phone and set it up, and same for your camera. Let's go to a focal length and lens angle. And I'm afraid that I'm going to scare you with all the details from one side, but from another side, knowledge is freedom. So you will be free to change your settings however you want, if you want. Focal length. The term is referring to the zoom length of your camera. So you have camera and it has the zoom, it has length, okay? And your length and length. So don't mix it up. The focal length of your camera. As you understand, your phone doesn't have any focal length because it actually is flat. Your length in camera of your phone is flat, but if you are using the normal DSLR camera, digital camera with mirror or mirrorless, you will be able to have these settings because you have actually lens there. What do you need to understand about that? If you have the DSLR or mirrorless camera with the lens that is 35 millimeters, 50 millimeters or 85 millimeters, you are all covered and you don't have to jump through all of those hoops to create a good video, because your lens is going to be able to do this job and create a beautiful picture with just few settings. However, when you are recording with the phone, a lot of things are automated, but you have to jump through different hoops to be able to achieve the image you want, because automated means that it's not what you want, it's what camera wants, and we want to have a freedom. Now, what we need to understand here about the focal length, why do we need it, and how is it related to the length angle, this is the following. Have you seen a picture of it's called like fish eye view? You see a lot, like you can see the whole earth in one picture, like everything that is around, because the length is like fish eye. It takes the information from all around, which is not natural for a human eye. Human eye has limitations. With our eyes, we can see just like this. We cannot see everything that is around. So the difference in the image is because of the eye, or because of the lens, or the angle of the lens. So if the lens is wide, it means you get more information about the scene. You can see here and here all in one picture. If the lens is narrow or standard, you can see just this. And there is another lens angle when you can see in macro, like which is really narrow down to a specific object. Now, why do you need this? Because if you are recording with the wide lens camera, wide lens angle, it means that you will capture more information than what is needed for our portrait-like video. It's like a portrait. I'm sitting here one alone, and I don't have like group of people to show here. I don't need to show a lot of perspective. I'm not showing panorama. I'm not showing like city. I'm just me, and I want all the focus to be on me. What's the problem? You would say, let's just cut off everything unnecessary. The problem is the following, is that the wide angle lens camera is distorting the sides. So we have sides of the image. If you are recording with the wide angle camera, which is your phone, is wide angle camera. Your phone is wide angle camera. So when you're recording with the phone, you might notice that if you are sitting like that and you have hands in front of you, then very often you will have either small head and huge hands, or opposite, you will have a large head and small hands, and it's distorted. Everything is because of the wide angle lens camera, and we need to jump through different hoops to avoid this happening in our image. How do we do this? We need to avoid using wide angle camera lens settings in our phones and in your camera, of course. So what we need to have, we need to have a standard view. Now let me go into details, nitty-gritty, to give you an explanation of how all those angles work. Now, standard lens usually stands for 24 to 35 millimeter lens, and it is good for photography, for the videos like that, for street photography where the one object there is in the focus, or general shots where you don't need a lot of information. The 50 millimeter lens is the best for shooting the videos like we're doing for the shorts, because you have very nicely pictured and focused object in front, which is me or you, and then blurred background. This is what lens does. Now, in the phone, you don't have this capability, but you have a software in your phone that allows you to blur the background over there. And you can do it by choosing different scenes, or if your phone allows, you can do by choosing like which kind of lens is gonna be imitating. Wide lens is 18 millimeters to 24 millimeters, and this is used for capturing landscapes, architecture, large groups of people, because it's wide, it's open like this. It has a wide field of view. The ultra wide view is used for panorama, for landscape, city landscape, again for large groups of people, but you get more information. It has a broader field of view, it captures more information in the scene. And those ultra wide lenses, they produce this fish eye effect. So for you recording recording yourself is a no to use something like that. And I want you to understand that so you don't have these settings by mistake. And then just for your education, obviously macro view is the focus on a very close object to make it bigger in front of camera, so is like narrowed down to one object. And also is not suitable for you because if you are sitting 1 meter from your camera, you will not be even in the focus, you will be blurred. So now, because the phone doesn't have the lens, how does it do this job? You could see that the phone can have 3 or 4 lenses because each lens stands for a different type of lens. That's why you have so many lenses, and sometimes they are even combined to produce an effect like the blurred background. And to be able to do this, there is a hardware in the camera of your phone which you can touch, and software, which is the program that helps manipulate the incoming information from your camera. And this is how, by combining hardware and software, you get the image you want. It imitates how the camera, a DSLR camera, the real camera, works. The ability to switch between different scenes, like you could see the portrait scene or the landscape scene in your camera, it allows you to automatically change the settings for this particular scene and mimic the effects of multiple lenses with just one small phone. So to conclude this section of the video about the focal length and camera angle is that you need a portrait scene or imitate a portrait scene, and where you are in the focus and your background is not that much in the focus. Now let's talk about the resolution and aspect ratio. Wow, you have already watched the video about resolution and aspect ratio, but I'm going to recap so that you understand which settings to choose and why. Resolution stands for the sharpness of your image, and aspect ratio stands for how it's gonna be shown. Is it going to be horizontal or is it going to be vertical image? It's an aspect ratio of 2 sides, the top and the side. And depending on your camera capabilities, you will need to choose whether you shoot horizontally or vertically for the shots. We're talking about the shots. People usually watch shots in vertical format. People watch like this, but you can actually record like that. It just makes it simpler to record like this, but there is a trick. Why do you record like this and when do you record like this? So if you record vertically, what you will deal with is that these sides will be distorted. This downside, the upside is going to be bigger, looking bigger. So in the center, anything that is in the center will look smaller. That presents the issue, because if you are recording vertically like this, you will need to put your phone far from you so that you record yourself and you will be somewhere in this position, so that later during the editing phase we will actually cut out these sides. That's how you understand how do you record. So if your phone is able to record in 4K, so it means it records in very detailed way, then you can record horizontally, and then you will just cut out the sides of the video and keep just center, and it will become a vertical video. This process is simple during the editing, but you need to know some details about 4K recording before you make this choice, and I will cover this later. Otherwise, you record in full HD and vertically, but you have your phone a little bit far, and you ensure that your hands do not fall here and your forehead do not fall here in these sections of the video when you are recording, because you will be distorted and you will have huge head or huge hands. Sometimes you can record in full HD also like that, and it all depends on how your phone camera performs, so maybe it's gonna be your choice as well. What do we want to avoid is distortion of the sides. That is why, number one, we do not record on the frontal camera, which has a lot of distortion. We prefer to turn the phone and record on this camera because it has better quality, and then we can cut out, and we don't want to record very close trying to see in our camera how the picture will look like, because it's misleading. We are not going to present the picture that you will see in your monitor. We will cut off the sides and make it closer. Here on the screen now I'm showing you aspect ratio and resolution settings for you to choose in your mobile camera or even in your camera. For 4K horizontal format you record in 16:9 because it's horizontal, 16:9 aspect ratio, and the resolution will be 3840 by 2160. Or you can also record in aspect ratio 4:3 because like it's gonna be not that wide, it's gonna be less wide because we will cut this off anyway. And in this case you will find that the resolution is 2560 by 1920. Now, if you choose to record in Full HD, which is lower resolution because maybe your phone doesn't allow 4 HD or you have issues with code, which we discuss later, then in this case you record in Full HD, and for the horizontal format 16:9 is gonna be 1920 by 1080. For the aspect ratio 4:3 is gonna be 1920 by 1440 or even 1600 by 2000. Now, for Full HD, if you cannot record in horizontal format, your resolution is not very good and you need to record in vertical format, then Full HD vertical format will look like this. The aspect ratio is 9:16, so the smaller number is here, 16 is here, and it's gonna be 1080 by 1920. Remember these settings, they are all on the screen and they are all in description. And now let's talk about video codecs that I mentioned earlier. So video codecs, now those are compression and decompression programs, let's say. It's application, it's a technology that compresses and decompresses your video for streaming, for file transfer, for file storage. So these images that you have captured, they are a lot. They take a lot of space in your memory. There are codecs that you are using. And the term codec is created from two words, codec, compress, decompress. Very easy. So compressing makes the file smaller and decompressing makes the ability to play the video properly with good quality without losing quality because of the previous compression. This is how this technology works. And how is it related to you? Well, your phone and your camera has the ability to choose the codec in which you will be recording, and usually it is in your phone, it looks like high quality video recording, just like that, and you might not know that under this it is a codec that is hiding, like that you are choosing. Now let me explain to you which codecs you should choose. There is very widely used codec, which is H264. This codec is used widely and it performs well. It has a good quality of the image and good compression. But with this codec, you cannot record 4K videos. So anytime you want to record 4K videos, you usually will have to use different codec, which is a next level. It's H265. The previous was 64. And it's also called HEVK, HEVK altogether. It's abbreviation. So this codec does better compression and it works for 4K because it's large, it is a large size, but there is an issue with this. Not all PCs have those codecs, and you might record with your phone because you bought your phone last year and it has this codec, but you might transfer this video to your PC and your programs are not going to support it. You won't be able to even play it. And sometimes the video editing tools, they have this codec so you can edit them. So it's a little bit complicated. What I advise you is there are two things you can do to fix the issue if you want to record in 4K. Now, the first one is you record your video on the phone with this new codec H265 and move it to your PC, try to open it, try to pull it in CapCut and check if it works. If it works, then it's fine. There is even other trick, you know, it can work in your CapCut, and then when you export it doesn't work. There are a lot of things to learn, but I don't want you to be overstressed. So let's say like this: if you're not sure you can edit with the 4K video, record in Full HD, then you will need to ensure that your settings have H.264 codec. And this is the one solution number one. The second solution is maybe upgrade your PC and install this new codec that's necessary for you. You can reach out to any computer master to help you with this. Now here on the screen as usual is recommended settings. And the settings is you choose your codec depending on your ability for further editing. Very simple. Both codecs are working well if you have them installed. Now, since we spoke about codecs, let's discuss also the containers for your videos. Do you think it's too much information? No, I don't think. You need to know this information, because if you don't, then you will run into different problems during the editing phase. So you need to understand this. Codecs are often used with containers. What container is? So when we're talking about the video is a set of different images, right? Recorded with different frame rate, resolution and everything. But there is also an audio that is recorded with this image, and this audio has its own format of recording. I didn't even cover this in this video, which audio format you are going to use. So you have two different already files there. And what about the titles of this video? Who is the author of this video? When did you record this video? All this information is necessary, isn't it? When you want to search for it, when you want to find it, you need this information. So container is like a box that keeps inside all this information, all the images, all the audio, and it has all subtitles, titles, everything necessary. And it's just you click on the file and it opens and plays. But behind this is the container, and we also call it file format. And you could hear about this before, like this is an MP4 video, or this is MOV video for iOS. So iOS iPhones, they have MOV, and the Android, they usually record in MP4. But there are more containers than this, and they are performing differently. None of them is a problem, but we're working with the widely used containers. So to this MP4 and MOV, I would add one more, which is Matryoshka. Can you believe it? Its abbreviation is MKV and it's called Matryoshka. Purpose of the container is to encapsulate the different files in different formats which work with different codecs: video, audio, metadata, etc. So let me recap. Popular video formats or video container formats is number one, MP4, also is known as MPEG-4, widely used in streaming and video playback. Another one is MKV, which is known as Matryoshka, also known for its flexibility and ability to work with like streaming and different environments. There is one that is called AV, is old file format. Anytime you will export anything in this file format, it will make your file huge. So if you have one time a file that is like 10 gigabytes, most probably check the file format. You most probably exported it in this AV. It's old version used in Microsoft Windows, and we are not using it a lot, but I'm giving you a hint so that you know why would you run in any troubles. And then MOV is used in iOS devices, in MacBook and iPhones. So as you understood, those file formats or containers, usually called only file formats online, this is what you hear, they have difference in sizes and performance. That's all. Now, recommended settings on the screen now. You can see that you use obviously either MP4 for Android or MOV for iOS. Let's simplify the things. Now, you won't believe, but we go to actual settings of the recording, which will impact the image, and it's exposure. You could hear about exposure. It's a little bit complicated, the topic, but we will try to simplify it. This is how it goes. Exposure is amount of light that will be reaching your camera sensor or film. We don't record with film, so camera sensor. And this will determine how light your image is or how dark your image is, how much information it captures. You want to ensure that your picture is balanced, is not oversaturated, it doesn't have too much exposure, you don't have too much white, and you want to ensure it's not too dark. So how do we do this? Usually in camera, this is regulated by few elements. When I talk camera, I mean like real camera, not phone camera. And it's regulated by shutter speed, by aperture and ISO. I will cover it shortly, but most probably your phone camera doesn't even have these settings. However, you can work with those settings. Let me just go through the list first to give you an explanation, and then we'll see if we are going to work with it or not. Shutter speed is how fast the shutter of the camera closes, so it means that how much light it allows. For example, the shutter speed, let's imagine that the shutter speed is like this. Here is the lens, and the shutter speed is going to be two curtains that is going through this lens, scanning the image that it sees. So the fast shutter speed would have very little light and will allow to pass just like this, and it will capture so many details that even if there will be a splash of water, you most probably will see drops like they have frozen. Now when the shutter speed is quite slow, then it's going to be a lot of light, and the curtains will go just like this through the sensor and allow a lot of light for a long time, and the image will be blurred. So if you will see the waterfall shot in the low shutter speed, you will not see drops go flying like this. You will just see a blurred water stream just like this, you know. So this is the difference. Now for our type of videos, we are not interested in any of those extreme settings. We just want our shutter speed to be normal for you to be able to have good crispy image, but at the same time we don't want too many details. So when we move the hand, we want to have image blur, and shutter speed also regulates this. And usually shutter speed is measured in fraction of a second. Is going to be something like 1/1000. So one fraction out of 1,000 of a second. If 1 second has 1,000 fractions, then it's going to be very fast shutter speed. Or the shutter speed can be just like as long as 1 second. It closes within 1 second, which is a lot, is extremely slow. We are framing in 24 or 25 frames per second, which means in our second we have 24 or 25 frames, and we want a shutter speed to move like 2 fractions for each frame, and it would sound like this. We want to have 1/50 or 1/60 shutter speed. That's all. This is how you are setting up shutter speed. 150, 160. The second number is usually a double of the number of frame rates. That's all. Now let's go to aperture. Aperture is the opening in the camera lens that allows the light to pass. So the opening can be like this, the opening can be like that, and we're talking about exposure. You remember, it means how much light passes through the lens. We have a shutter speed to see how much light passes through the lens when the shutter moves. And we also have the opening of the lens to see how wide will be the opening, and it works like a human eye when the pupil is opening wider and lower to allow more light or less light. So of course, if the aperture is opened up, we have a lot of lights. If aperture is closed, we have less lights. Now why do we care about this? Because aperture is how much lights come in will determine what's visible on the background. So if you want to have a blurred background, you should have a closed aperture so that it can focus only on the image that is you and not focus on the image that is behind you. So if you want to have blurred background, you should manipulate the aperture. And here is the trick: the wider the aperture, the lower is the number that stands for this wide aperture. Let me show you. So the wider aperture, the lower is the number. The number would be something like f/2.8. And if the narrower the aperture is, the higher will be the number, like f/16. Okay, you would say, why do we have this f? It's just called f-stop number. F-stop is when we stop the light. Okay, so there is a focal length, which we spoke previously, and this focal length will be limited and stopped. That's why we say f-stop, and we say like this small opening for the light is gonna be something like f/16, for example. Yeah, it means that the light will be very blurred and we just have something in our focus and nothing else. And then, for example, the bigger opening and the number f1.8 or 2.8 is gonna mean that we see you in the frame, but the background is visible. You can see what's going on there, but it's not that sharp. Okay, simple thing to remember is that the wider the opening, the lower is the number of the aperture, and the aperture in your phone obviously is not mechanical, is regulated by the algorithm, so most probably it's going to be automated in your phone. And you might see somewhere the numbers like f2.8, f1.2. So these are the numbers you usually have for portrait style recording. One f1.2, f2.8. Let's go to ISO. So the ISO is the sensitivity of the camera sensor to the light. ISO is actually abbreviation that doesn't have any connection with the photography and stands for International Organization for Standardization. How is it connected? I don't know, but it just means that there are numbers. There is number like ISO 100, ISO 200, ISO 300, 400, etc. and so on. As more sensitivity of the light, as more light you have in your image. And there is a problem with the ISO. ISO, the sensitivity of your sensor, it allows you to capture images in dark situations when the ISO is higher. So you make the higher sensitivity and you make your picture lighter. But the issue with this is that there is an effect of grain there, like a sand, like your picture is made out of sand, and this it makes the quality of the image look not good. And when we want to have a professional quality of the image, so we want to avoid high ISO. That's why we provide the lights so that we don't put high ISO. And usually ISO in your camera is going to be automated, or you can manually increase, decrease ISO, but the important thing is that you need to ensure that you don't have the grainy image. Now, let's talk about how to balance this exposure. We have covered three elements of exposure: shutter speed, aperture, and ISO, and balancing those three elements is what makes your picture good, looking good. And if you think it's too much, don't worry, because there is like one setting that will allow you on the phone to balance it. Now, remember that what we want to achieve is your image to look naturally, just like you see it in the mirror. This is what we want to achieve with all those settings, and that's why we are jumping through the hoops with recording with the phone. We need to achieve a good level of brightness and avoid too much darkness. And this is terminology you need to understand. Overexposure. It means that there are too much of light, the objects in the image are overlighted, and because of this you are losing the details, shadows, and all these little things that makes your image look natural. Underexposure means that there is no enough light and you struggle to understand what's going on in the image. So to manage it, there is a setting that is called EV. It is an exposure value. Exposure value will automatically manipulate all those things like shutter speed and aperture and ISO in your phone. And usually those values are in numbers like 0, and then we go to more exposure value is going to be +1, +2, +3, or less exposure value -1, -2, -3. And usually your phone camera has this value, and in all applications of cameras there is possibility to manipulate this EV, or it's gonna call just simply exposure or simply light. Important thing to remember is that on your phone you need to ensure to lock the exposure. You need to lock this number that you have selected. So you are choosing the focus of your image, you are choosing the amount of light in your image, and then you need, after this, you need to lock it. And in the next videos I'm going to show you how to do this, but for now you just need to remember, lock the exposure is rule number one. Now, locking the exposure, what it does, because your mobile phone is totally automated in terms of how lights affect the sensor of your phone camera, that means that if there is any change in the light, like you made like this with the hand, then the amount of light will change and the colors will change, the amount of light will change, and your image will be distorted, and it's going to be lighter, lower light, yellower, more blue, and it's going to be not looking good. So we want to lock it so that anytime you move, the exposure settings do not change. Now on the camera you see the exposure settings, like to round up this section of the video, and here are the settings for the exposure. If we're talking about the EV exposure value, then it's going to be something like ±1 or ±2. If you are able to set the ISO, it's going to fluctuate from ISO 100 to ISO 300. With the lights that you have purchased, I don't think you need any more, and maybe you will stay somewhere around 200 for ISO for a good light. If your light is a little bit low, maybe you will have to go for a bigger number. Aperture is going to be f1.2, f2 or f2.8, which is good for the portrait shooting. And shutter speed, as we said, is 1.50 or 1.60 depending on your frame rate. Now, because I have mentioned that your colors in your image can change, we have to talk about white balance. You remember that white balance is the tint of your video image. Either it is warm or it's cold. Your camera cannot automatically understand what kind of light conditions do you have. So it doesn't understand that you are sitting inside the house with the fluorescent light or LED lights. It cannot understand if you are outside on the sunny day, and it cannot understand if you are in the shadow. Usually, automatically it can adjust, but we don't want our camera to assume where we are. We just want to set it by ourselves manually. So what we want to do, we want to ensure that we understand what white balance values we have. Now, white balance is balancing your camera settings so that your white elements in the video are going to remain white, and obviously it's gonna affect all colors. So how do we understand the white balance? You can take a white piece of paper, put it in front of your camera and see what color does it present on your screen, and that's going to be how your camera sees. And when you adjust the white balance to cooler colors or to warmer colors, it's gonna balance the image, and that's what we want to achieve, because we want to have natural colors. In the DSLR camera, on mirrorless camera or automated camera, maybe there are three options how you can set the white balance. Option number one is color temperature scale. So there would be some kind of scale with the color starting from yellow to blue, and there will be some kind of transition, and you can have a cursor in your camera that allows you to go lower to yellow colors, and sometimes you have the indication of the Kelvin number. So you remember that we are measuring the light in kelvins, so you would have something like 2500 kelvins for lower numbers and lower, and then for higher values, for blue numbers, you might have up to 10,000 kelvins. Yeah, we are recording in approximately 5,000 to 6,000 kelvins, so we need to ensure we balance it out somewhere there. Another option how you can regulate the white balance is presets, and presets, they have names, something like cloudy day or daylight or fluorescent light or shade or cloudy or incandescent light, which could be called something like tungsten flashlight even when you are shooting. So As you understand, in all those slides, the camera adjusts automatically to those conditions. It's better, of course, to have a scale, but in case your phone doesn't have a scale and your white balance is only choosing the scene, then this is how we go about this. And another way to regulate the white balance is custom white balance, which means that you will set actually a number after measuring one white or gray piece of paper. So you will put the piece of paper in front of your camera, measure it, and then automatically it will give you the number to adjust your white balance. That's custom white balance, which is available in DSLR camera usually and not available in your phone. So what do you do in your phone? Here is on the screen what settings you choose. And you choose either daylight or fluorescent light if you have options like this, or you choose a scale that is around 5000K to 6000K approximately. And there is no standard answer because I don't know what picture you have and what lights you have. And at last, let's talk about the camera apps. There are many camera apps. They are free, they are paid, and they have different set of features and settings that you can adjust. Depending on the manufacturer, there can be some features free and some features paid. So a lot of choice on the market. And because the market is changing, the camera apps can change prices and conditions to what you can access, what you cannot access. And there is not much I can recommend. So under this video, there is a list of camera apps that you can look at and see if anything suits you. But what I need you to understand is that something that I have discovered is that maybe your native camera app, the one that is installed by default by your manufacturer, so it means that you didn't change the operating system on your own somehow. So this is how you bought your phone, default camera app. Usually it might be the best for your phone. Why? There are a few reasons. Number one, this app might be created specifically for your phone, especially in the case of iPhone. So those apps are created specifically for the iPhone. And manufacturer has more access to the information and able to have more control over your phone hardware. When we talk about third-party apps, additional apps that you might want to download, they do not have this full access to your camera hardware, and they resort in recording your camera sensor only and then manipulating this image, which results in you having less quality and detailed image from third-party apps than from natural native camera app. So here is the trick. The native camera apps usually, for some reason, do not have too many options to manipulate those settings. Like it's too much automated and many things are locked. So you have to make a choice. There is a research that you will need to do, install different apps, try your native app and see where is the best image. And sometimes you might need even to buy apps to see if those apps are working. And there is an option to refund if you want later if you don't like this app. I tried several and I came to conclusion that actually yes, the quality of the image captured is better in the native app, but it doesn't allow you to manipulate many of the settings to get your image exactly to where you want. So we just need to optimize whatever we have. There is no one size fits all, unfortunately, in this way, and that's why I gave you all this information so that you can have a freedom to choose and to navigate. But we do not stop recording and we do not stumble on this. We record and experience come with time. So in the next video I'm going to show you the example of how those features can work in different apps. I'm using Android. I'll show you on Android, but it's related to other operating systems of your phone. So don't be scared, stay with me, just try to create some kind of folders in your mind for all these terminologies so that you can return to them anytime you need. And see you in the next video.